Hey everybody, this is my 10-gallon pea puffer tank, and I recently added several neon tetras in here. You can see darting and dashing around the back, and I'd had them in quarantine for about a month. And so when I took them out of quarantine, I put them in this tank. I shot a video about it, and a couple of my viewers promptly pointed out that it looks like some of those neons have ick. And when I put them in the tank, I kind of noticed that, but I sort of chalked it up to maybe they had some bubbles on them from being poured into the tank or something. And I made a mental note to come back and check later to see if it really was ick, because I couldn't believe I had just pulled these fish out of quarantine and they had ick. But after my viewers pointed it out, it reminded me, so I did indeed go back and check, and you can see they've got ick. They are covered in it. At least a few of them are. So you might be asking, did you really pull them out of your quarantine tank covered in ick and put them right in this tank? And the answer is yes, I did. If you want to know why, it's because I'm stupid. I never even looked at the fish. I'm not kidding. I pulled them out of the quarantine tank and just brought them up here and put them in this tank. And to make matters worse, I put some of them in my living room tank. I have checked, and they do indeed have ick on a few of those as well. And I took the bristlenose pleco that had been in that tank, and I put that in my black ghost knifefish tank downstairs. Now, I haven't seen that one since I put it in the tank. It's a tiny little thing, and that's a very crowded tank, so it's just vanished in there. I don't even know if it's still alive or dead. But I have to treat it as though it was contaminated with ick, and I've now contaminated that tank. So I'm currently treating 3 tanks for ick. Again. So I'm not one to normally just medicate fish for no reason, like just bring them home and start medicating them in the quarantine tank. But I think from now on, I'm going to start doing that with neons. I'm going to go ahead and just treat them as though they've got ick, because they usually do, it seems. Whenever I bring neons home, it's a pretty good likelihood I'm bringing ick home as well. The neons, for some reason, are really notorious for that. I guess the real reason is they're so popular. They're the most popular fish in the aquarium hobby, and so they're bred under terrible conditions. And it's just very common to get neons with ick. So if you're wondering how I managed to do this without even bothering to look at the fish, I will say that they were in my quarantine tank that's in my shower stall in the bathroom. And it's dark back there. It's difficult for me to sort of get in there and twist and look down into the tank. I was using a flashlight from day to day, and as long as I saw them swimming around in there and I didn't see any dead fish, I was satisfied that everything was okay. And they've been in there for at least a month. And I guess my mentality, again, I didn't really think a whole lot about this, but I'm sort of thinking along the lines of, if they're still alive, they're fine. There's no way if I brought home fish that had ick a month ago that they'd still be alive and swimming around the tank. They just would have died from their ick. I still find it very odd that not all of them had the ick, only some of them, and some of them are covered in it. So how that works, I'm not sure. The animal's immune systems might have something to do with it, but no matter what your immune system is, there's only so much you can do about an external parasite that bores into your skin. It's not like they're fighting off a head cold. It's a physical animal that's literally chewing into their body. So again, I don't know how much their immune system could defend them from that, but maybe it does. I don't know, because we're seeing some that have it and some that don't, and they were all in a 10-gallon tank together for a month. And yet not all of them contracted the disease. The other thing I found puzzling, but I've thought about it since, and now I kind of understand it a little better, is how after a month were they still alive and not just overwhelmed by the ick. And I realized that tank is in the bathroom and it's on the floor in my basement. So the ambient temperature down there where that tank sits is probably in the upper 60s, maybe about 70 degrees. With my furnace downstairs and all the other fish tanks and lights and heaters and everything right in the other room, the basement is a little warmer than you would typically think of an unheated basement. But it's still not warm down where the quarantine tank these were in is. So that lower temperature probably slowed the life cycle of the ick enough that I only went through maybe 2 full life cycles during the course of that month. So for me to simply make the assumption that, well, they're still alive after a month, they must be fine. That was just complete, lack of thought on my part. I'm not even going to pretend I've got anything or anyone to blame on this one except myself. So, lesson learned, I won't do it again. Next time I collect them out of there, I'm not going to do what I did this time, which was literally fish around until I could scoop a couple out in the net, and then I came upstairs with them in the net really quick, and I dropped them into this tank, and then I went down and tried to get a couple more. I never put them in any kind of container to transfer them, and if I had simply put them in my clear pitcher I have downstairs as a holding tank while I brought them upstairs, I could have just taken a moment to look at them while they were in that pitcher and said, oh wow, and then put them back in the quarantine tank and started treating them in there. So I also feel bad about the fact that I've just let those fish sit in that tank suffering from ick for a month and never knew they even had it. So again, it's impossible for me to really look into that tank. The big piece of driftwood blocks vision physically, and it also produces so much tannins in there. It's about all I can do with a flashlight just to see the fish swimming around, and I know that they're still alive. I think out of the last batch I only lost 2 neons. So on that note, I am using that particular quarantine tank as an experimental tank to see if I can't get a higher survival rate with these neons, because I usually lose a lot of them to my water when I first get them. So by putting them in that quarantine tank, I've been using RO water mixed with my water, and the results of that experiment seem to have gone really well. I got a much higher success rate, but then of course I had to pull this stupid dunderhead move of just grabbing them out of the tank and throwing them in here. So I now have 3 tanks that are infected with ick again, and I'll keep you up to date. We're not going to do a whole huge series of discussions on how I'm treating it and all that. I'm not doing heat. I'm not doing anything complicated. I've got my ick attack from Cordon. I've used this plenty of times in the past. It does what it says. If you use it as directed, it's good stuff. I'm not worried so much about highly infected fish, because the only really infected fish are the ones that came in new. The fish that are currently in the tank aren't really in any danger. I've got the treatment going in there, so when we go through the first life cycle and all of those little white spots get off of these fish, all those little creatures that have bored into the fish's flesh will eventually come out, and they will fall to the bottom and they will begin to reproduce. And then they have to, after they've reproduced, those new ones will go look for host animals again. And the treatment that's in the tank actually prevents that from happening during that period. So none of the fish in there that aren't affected, the original inhabitants of the tank, they're not going to get it because I'm putting the medication in the tank. So they're not going to be infected. All I have to do now is wait for the currently infected fish to heal, and the cycle will be broken. They won't get reinfected with a new batch after the one life cycle goes through. So I'm not too concerned about it. It's just a pain in the butt, and it's just, I feel like kicking myself. It's just such a stupid maneuver, so easily preventable, and just, again, I got nobody to blame but myself, and I got no excuses. It was just a dumb mistake, and just operating on a huge assumption that I should not have been. So, as I always say, if someone else can learn from my mistakes, then it's certainly worth putting them out there if it can prevent somebody else from doing something like this. So, once again, live and learn from my mistakes, and really, really give your fish a good look before you take them out of your quarantine tank and put them into your permanent tanks, or else you can very easily end up doing something as dumb as I just did. So there you go, for whatever that's worth. I hope that helps somebody. If not, it's just another page in the, annals of me keeping my fish. I always tell you, I'll show you the good, the bad, and the indifferent. So there you go. There's another one of how not to do it. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Don't forget this one is my pea puffer tank. My other infected tanks are my living room tank, and my black ghost knife fish tank is also infected. So thanks again, and I will see you real soon on the next one.